Have you, experienced recently where you buy, certain fast-moving consumer goods specifically, and you probably used to buy a certain packet of biscuit, cookies, or milk, whatever, and you have realized in recent times that the quantity of the product has reduced, however, the price remains the same or has increased over time? Well, that is called shrinkflation, and more recently than ever, Nigeria is experiencing shrinkflation in when it comes to the fast-moving consumer product. And not just that, we've seen that play out in other sectors as well. And we did ask Nigerians how they are coping or how this is impacting their spending tradition, personal finance and family finance as a whole. And the question we put out there was, share your thought. They're all noticing that some amount of money isn't buying as much as it used to, and products are getting smaller, but prices aren't. How are you handling this shrinkflation? And we did get quite a number of responses from Nigeria. Let's take a look at, from Nigerians, I beg your pardon. And let's take a look at some of the responses that we did get on social media. Gina Nodi is saying, we apply coping mechanism, accept and face the reality, then adjust. Well, she's saying that she's coping just fine. Well, let's move away from Gina's comment now. Yakubu Isaac is saying, no more frugalities, buying only the necessities, and purchasing power have been eroded. Yakubu is saying that she no longer buys frugality, she no longer spends carelessly. Let's move away from Yakubu's comment now. Chimo B is saying, I have been adjusting every area of my life, and I keep adjusting by the day to make it less frustrating, yet prices of food and commodities in particular keep going higher. It's not getting any better. Thank you, Chimobi, for sending in your comment. Let's move away from Chimobi's comment now. Sajida is saying, and that's why we say that increasing the minimum wage will not solve the problem and control inflation, period. Thank you, Sajida, for that comment. Away from Sajida's comment now, Awal Abubakar is saying 200,000 in early 2015 is valuable than 1 million naira now. Interesting analysis by Awal Abubakar. But let's move away from that comment now. Abdul Ibrahim is saying, explaining the situation and how we are coping is still expensive and excruciating. God's intervention is sought. Indeed, God's intervention is needed at this time for Nigeria and the Nigerian economy. But let's move away from Abdul's comment. Clement is saying it's normal. Someone with 1 million naira in 2004 was richer than someone with 1 million naira in 2024. 1 million naira now is like 20,000 naira then. Interesting analysis by Clement. But what are your metrics for coming up with such conclusion? Thank you, Clement, however, for sending in your comment. And Jere MC Paul is saying that someone with 150,000 in 2014 is richer than someone with 1 million naira in 2024. Again, another person using statistics and playing around with numbers. Bimbo Ades is saying it's a terrible situation. 1,000 naira is like 10 naira of those days. So pathetic. Thank you, Bimbo, for your comment. And Japheth Joseph is saying, I can't even pay bride price. Thank you, Japheth, for sending in your comment. And thank you, everybody, for sending in your comment. Hearing from you indeed, put our questions in perspective. But still on the conversation for today, like I said before, the conversation will be on shrinkflation. Like I said, it is, when you see certain commodities decrease in size, however, the price remains the same. And I'm joined now by my guest, who is an economic analyst, Dr. Aliyu Iliyas. Thank you, Doctor, for coming on Business Daily this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you too, Doctor. You've heard from Nigerians talking about shrinkflation. Let me now throw the question at you, Doctor. Have you noticed this? And if you have, how are you coping with this shrinkflation, which is very common, especially with fast-moving consumer goods?
Right, it's quite clear, and it's something that is common virtually everywhere that purchasing power is having an issue. The issue just remains that the manufacturer find a way to still sell the same quantity of what they sell and compromising the quality of what they actually sell. So it's a normal thing that we should expect, because if you look at purchasing power, and you recall, some time ago, even the manufacturer said they are having unsold, and because they are having unsold simply because people cannot purchase. So what they do now is that to give people what they can actually purchase, which is at the detriment of consumers.
But there is a question that I saw repeatedly, especially from Nigerians, asking questions like, is it really, is shrinkflation actually a treat or a trick? Because some of them believe that it seems as though they are being tricked by manufacturers. I came across a video recently on social media where a person bought a can of milk. However, the can was half full, but got it for the same price. And he asked questions such as, am I being tricked? So let's throw the question at you. Is it a trick, or is it a coping mechanism by manufacturers?
Right. If you go by the consumer rights, consumer ought to be educated and informed about any changes. However, whereby I used to buy cookies, whereby I used to see maybe 4 therein, and now I can only see 3. Right. So it's simply a trick, not a treat. So in the long run, it's fall back to consumer protection. What are we actually doing? Because we are still spending the same amount, we are still also getting something less. But the problem is that, are we going to blame the manufacturer also? That is the question. Are we going to blame the economy, which is correct? I think the economy bring about this shrinkflation.
The question again, like you asked, are we to blame the manufacturers? Are we to blame the consumers? Who then is to blame? But then we will talk more on, the rights of the consumers regarding the construct of shrinkflation. Let's go on a short break. When we return, my guest, Dr. Aliyu Iliyas, is still on standby, so to stay. And you're still watching Business Daily, coming to you live on Trust TV. And just before the break, we started a conversation, and the focus is on shrinkflation, which is an economic construct, putting together 2 separate words, that is shrinkage and inflation. And according to, dictionary definition, shrinkflation is the decrease in the quantity of a product. However, you see the price of the product remaining the same. And I still have my guest with me, who is an economic analyst, Dr. Aliyu Iliyas. Thank you again, Doctor, for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And just before the break, we started, talking as to whether or not it's a trick or a treat by manufacturers. But even before we get to that, I will like for you to touch on the importance of our viewers, understanding what shrinkflation is and how it applies to them on a day-to-day basis. Right.
Without grammatical interpretation, I think it's a common knowledge that every consumer now have to look at the downsizing, outweigh the what we actually buy, because nowadays, if you buy anything, the sachet of that thing remains the same, while the quantity therein has been reduced. I think it's a clear one. If I don't want to be mentioning products, but it has cut across virtually all products, and it's a strategy of those manufacturers, simply because they do not want to lose customers. Why they don't want to lose out of profit? Also, at least it should be a margin. At least they can break even. They can still remain in, and to remain in business, to break even simply means that you need to keep your customers, because it's a common knowledge that if customers see that things reduces, they'll say, okay, this thing has reduced, let me, but they'll make it in a way that you will not take notes except you are very conscious of it. And it's cut across all manufacturers, both multinational, international, and local producer. It's a practice that everybody has actually engaged on. But the question is that, why do they engage on this? You look at cost of energy, cost of borrowing, the inflation, purchasing power of consumers. If you look at all these things together, they will say that's why they resort to such approach in business.
But Doctor, you said something. You said that this is done without the consumer even knowing. And doesn't this come across as misleading or deceptive to an extent?
Right. If you look at it from consumer protection perspective, right, I think it's quite deceiving, because for me to expect to see 5, or I used to see 5 in the sachet before, and now I'm seeing 3. Perhaps it used to be as big as this, now it is very shrink. No, I think it's actually a bad one. But when you say a bad one, you also discover that these people are also struggling, and we are in the same economy. It's not that we are coming from another, climb. It's the same climb, and it's not only in Africa that is obtainable, even abroad. Sometimes they used to do actually, but the only thing is that there is basic consumer education that should have come into it and say, no, we are actually doing this because of the economy. But perhaps they could even reduce the sachet, but they will not reduce the sachet, because by the time you even sight the sachet from afar, you say, no, I don't want to take it, right, because it's small. But they will make sure the sachet remain the same thing, but the content inside is what they actually deal with, and it's quite a deceiving way of doing business.
But are there any ethical considerations that should be put in place? Especially, I would personally want to believe that even if that is the case, there should be some sort of communication to the consumer. Or let's hear from you. I mean, you are the economist here.
Right. The thing is, on a basic education, we have right to choice as a consumer. So what I think they should have done is that this is now 80,000, this is now 50, or this is now 5,000, this is now 4,000, so that you have the choice to choose. But this they actually affect the fast-moving consumer goods, FMCG. They have a lot of competition. So each product you have like 10 alternatives. And Nigeria is not a country that still have loyalty to a particular product. But as it were, the thing is that we only need that basic education to know the difference. Sometimes they will not even tell you the difference. They will tell you the efficacy of this is ABC, but by the time you go in or you buy that product, the efficacy has actually reduced. It's also applied to a pharmaceutical product. I had to buy an eye drop, and I was told this one is 600, this one is 1,000, and this one is 1,800. So I need to engage the person in charge that, okay, why is this one? He said now this one will solve so and so issues. Why this one will only solve this issue? And I say, if I use this, that means I will continue to use it and I won't get results, and I have to opt for. That is how the basic education would have been. But the thing is, as a consumer, are you also conscious to ask that question, that this thing you are giving me, is it the one that will be, the efficacy will work? But in an ideal situation, there shouldn't be room for ephemeral products. Everything should be the same quality, the same standard, and the price should justify what we are actually buying. But who will take us to this? It is the regulatory bodies that have to look into it, and FCCPC have to look into it. I can tell you the practice, because people are in business to actually make profit. So they wouldn't say they want to do business without making profit. So because of that, they practice this shrinkflation, which I think government should look into it and caution manufacturing industries that embark on such ideas.
And before we even get to the policy side of things, I would like for us to touch on what manufacturers can do to be more transparent and engage more in honest marketing. Because I personally find it, like I stated before, there are certain brands of milk I used to buy, and previously the tin would be full, but now you see it's halfway, but the size of the tin remains the same, and no one is saying anything about it. So is there what manufacturers, are you saying they don't have any roles to play in ensuring that they have a more honest marketing approach to their consumers?
I think integrity is key in business, and if you don't maintain integrity, you'll be out of business very soon. Because by the time people get to know that this manufacturer is out to always cheat people will go for the alternative. You might look at it from the onset that you are actually breaking in, but at the time people will run from your product. I think the manufacturer have the responsibility, and that's part of consumer right, to educate consumer that, okay, now this is the status of things today. Because of the cost of production, we have reduced our size from 10 to 8, and people will be aware that yes, people that are still loyal to that product will still continue to buy. But in the quest to outsmart competition or competitors, they try to not to engage you, not to tell you. And that's why I think they need to be called to order. We understand that there is a problem and there's purchasing power problem. That doesn't mean people will still, manufacturers should keep giving people wrong products in a place of very high price that people are buying. I think it's a wrong approach. But the thing is, they also call it technology. You know, most of them will say what they used to sacrifice for a particular product, they find way of reducing, they'll call it technology. That's not technology. You are just outsmarting and cheating people. So I think manufacturers should learn how to educate consumer concerning what they are giving consumer.
Well said. I would like for us to touch on, policy measures. You made mention of the FCCPC, that is the Federal Consumer Protection Commission.
Right.
The FCCPC. What can the FCCPC do, to ensure that consumers get exactly what it is that they pay for? I believe they have a role to play in that.
Right. I think first and foremost, I think even FCCPC should be the last resort, because we have actually regulatory bodies for all these agencies, for all these products. So the first thing is that they, like NAFDAC, like Standard Organization of Nigeria, like NERC, like these regulatory bodies, they have the first responsibility to ensure that Nigerians benefit from exactly what the manufacturer said they are going to benefit from. It is when we now notice the compromise that we now go to FCCPC. So what I think is that, like my concern always is that most of our regulatory bodies are serving these people rather than serving the consumers, because they are supposed to be a middleman to make sure that consumers are not cheated. And manufacturers also are breaking. But at this point whereby consumer is suffering and nobody is complaining, that's when FCCPC will now have to comes in. And they have been trying their best, I must say that, because I saw them at, was it SAD some time ago, that they said you should label, because now, yesterday I still noticed that I went to a superstore, discovered that what they actually label, when you want to purchase, by the time they are purchasing, you see that the price is actually different, because they notice that by the time you even see the price, you might even go away, and that's not good enough. So I think FCCPC should do more, and they should do what is called undercover mystery shopping to actually get to these people and get the root of it. And they should also identify, in fact, if you ask Nigerians today, can you name products that are substandard compared to what you used to get before, Nigeria will give you a whole list. That would have directed the Consumer Protection Agency to actually do the best. So I think it's not even consumer FCCPC first, it should be regulatory body. What's the work of Standard Organization of Nigeria? People buy tire, and tire that is supposed to last for 3 years, within 6 months, you see the side has been, the wire is coming out. It's the responsibility of Standard Organization of Nigeria first to actually look into it. And if you look at FMCG, we still have regulatory body like NAFDAC, among others, that are actually taking care of. They should look at that area critically and analyze and engage them. Having engaged them, they also listen from, because if you ask manufacturers too, they also have a lot to say.
Well, we've spoken to what manufacturers can do and what policymakers can do, but is there any role that a consumer can play to ensure that shrinkflation is combated? I mean, in a case where there is rising inflation, we understand that Nigerians are advised to buy in bulk. There are certain measures that consumers are advised to adhere to. When it comes to shrinkflation, is there anything a consumer can do to ensure that it doesn't affect them as it would ordinarily affect them?
Well, I think consumers are reacting already, because this age we are is the age of what you need, not actually what you actually want at this point in time. So first and foremost, if you look at it, even manufacturers are having unsold. Why are they having unsold? It's because Nigerians are now holding back and saying, okay, I have to prioritize what I actually wanted. I don't want this anymore because I cannot afford it. I don't want this because it doesn't give me the desired expectation, right? So consumers simply think they have to stop. But then secondly is that as a consumer, please see something, say something. It is very, very key. Because if you think, well, they have cheated me, let me just not buy again, they would have cheated millions of people. So when you notice anything has changed, please come to the front burner and say it. But the consumer will also be conscious. They will also do that with cautious optimism. You recall that the issue of tomato paste. somebody came out and said tomato is dominated by sugar and whatever. Look at the faith of that person as at now. Lost pregnancy, remanded in police custody. So the judge will now think, if I say it, I hope I will not be at the receiving end. So that's another thing. We need to start giving people's confidence, because if you don't give people confidence, people will not say it. But the thing is, manufacturer will lose at the long run. You know why? People will buy less, and people will avoid buying their product. But before that, people would have suffered it too, and that's why government needs to come into play. So it's a tripartite something. Consumer see something, say something. Government see something. When you hear something, put an action. Manufacturer, don't try to cheat. If you cheat, you lose out in the long run. So I think that's the three way we must look at this. But all of this is a ripple effect of bad economy. It's a ripple effect of poor purchasing power. It's a ripple effect of continuous increments in NPR. So these are the things that we need to look at. So it's a triple side of it that we have to look at it side by side to have a better economy in Nigeria.
Doctor, you said something. You said it's important for consumers to be more vocal, and say what it is that they see. When you see something, say something. But then again, you made mention of the Risco versus Chioma case that has gone on for quite a while now.
Right.
And what that brings to mind now is, how can consumers create, the balance where they are able to air their views, yet air it respectively, or air it in a manner that they do not land themselves in trouble.
Right.
So what would your advice be for Nigerians?
I was part of there's a meeting recently by FCCPC that engaged Nigerian students, and I was a speaker. And my own topic is based on the role of students in consumer protection in Nigeria. So what I told them is that they must be proactive, not reactive. So as a student, or as a Nigerian youth, or as a Nigerian, you have the responsibility of seeing something going wrong and actually made mention of it. Beyond even making mention of it, it's easier now. Go on social media and call out any company. They will react to you. In fact, they will be begging for you to drop that thing down. Have you noticed? If you notice, most banks, once people complain about them, they're going to pay Google a whole lot, because it will be a bad record. And you remember, this age, when you are buying, you go and check reviews. What are the review of this product I want to buy? By the time you see the review that is negative, you will not buy. So I think Nigerians should continue to have that attitude of see something and say something. Always complain when you see something going wrong, because the number one negative part of the Africa is that we don't complain. You can see somebody in abroad, we see that this road is bad in my area. He will go and sue the government and say, why will you collect tax from me and you not fix the road in my frontage? You can see that. So the Nigeria must get to that level where you see that this thing I'm consuming is actually a bad one, and you go and complain. Perhaps if you don't even want to be shown, you can really call attention of maybe regulatory agency or FCCPC, and let the onus now be on them that they are not proactive. So I think we should be proactive consumers too. That is very, very key.
Well, Doctor, again, I'm going to take you up on your point about being, proactive consumers.
Right.
How can we be that and balancing doing it respectfully? What are the boundaries in the area of, calling out? I should say social media call out.
Yes.
Like you said, you can call banks now on social media, and they, respond to you even quicker than when you use the customer care services. So how can Nigerians, be proactive, like you've mentioned,
right,
and again maintain that balance?
I think I experienced, I traveled to Lagos, and I was supposed to return that same day. I think, yes, I went in the morning, so my flight was supposed to be 7 p.m. and this airline returned me to 2 p.m. Do you get? And I'm going to close by 4 p.m. Do you see the problem now? I'm supposed to return by 7, that's my ticket. You now text me and said, your flight is now 2 p.m. I have to call them out. I tag Festus Keyamo, tag the airline and everything, because I have a justifiable and genuine case. So the first thing is, you must be sincere at what you are saying. Don't try to bring somebody down. That's the case of Risco and Chioma. Risco is actually trying to damage his reputation. So the thing is, let's follow the process. See something, write black and white, either online or physical, to drop to them. In fact, if you go to bank now and get a complaint, you're supposed to get a ticket. A ticketing code that show that you have logged in your complaint. So let's just do it in a structural way, whereby even though they want to change the story, you can have black and white, you can have a record that says this is what I said, and this is why I actually. So we should start doing that. I think it should happen from where you are, not necessarily that you must be in the city center. You can be in the corner of your house and see something wrong. Please follow the process. Is that you write to the company that this thing you have given me is actually faulty, or you write to FCCPC, or you write to them and copy other regulatory bodies. So there's a lot of way to do it, because the world is now global. So if you do something bad and somebody complain about you, it can bring your company down. So you have to be conscious of when people go. Perhaps in a sane community, we are sane too, or in another climb rather, when you get a complaint, it's like $1 million check. Do you know why? It teaches you how to solve myriad of problems. It's like a secret that, okay, this thing you do is actually wrong. You get educated through a consumer, because we are the one that will tell you if you are doing well or if you are doing bad, and you now key into that. Therein, you use it to maximize. And so anybody who listens to complain are likely have chance of getting more customer or getting better at what they do. And that's why the issue of Chioma and Erisco is something that shouldn't have degenerated to this place. Because you recall, even FCCPC, their as executive vice chairman took it upon and go to court through that. But the man is not going backing down. But I can tell you, the brand will suffer it in the long run, because consumer will now see that why would someone complain and you're taking it, you want to finish and ruin the career of that person, without also supporting people calling out company that doesn't do anything for them. So if you have a genuine reason, come out and say it by having black and white, report officially. It's always good.
So when you're saying, what you're saying is that when consumers are putting out their reviews, honesty is important.
It's very, very key. When you do it honestly, you see, and that's why I said nowadays, before you purchase any product, you have to go and look at the review. So when the review said this thing is bad, I took it, this is bad, and perhaps it could be bad and they actually are swinging into action and solve the problems. But if they don't do that, it will be shown and they are going to lose. I can tell a lot of companies. I recall I consult for a particular e-commerce company, then, and they engaged me to actually look at their service delivery. But we actually carried it out, and I told them that in 3 years, if you don't change the way you are doing things, you are going to be out of business. Simply because their third party is taking the business for granted. They are not respecting consumers. And 3 years, I can tell you, they are down. They are out of business simply because they don't want to listen to what customers are actually saying. So it can happen to any company, any manufacturer can lose customers because people are looking for alternative. And tell me globally, how many products is single source now? Virtually all of them have alternative. And let me give you an example of the one that is single source, just like AEDC. Only AEDC. By the time we have alternative, are you not going to choose? I recall in the pension organization before, you cannot take your pension from one to the other. But the day they break it, that you can shift from here to here, everybody starts doing the right thing.
Competition.
It also happened in telecos. Before, if you have MTN Glow, you cannot port. But now you can port. So because you can port, they do not want to lose you. Imagine if 1 million people port out of a particular company. It's a problem. So Nigeria must start raising their awareness of conscious of, I deserve the right thing. Do the right thing for me, then you are fine. Do the wrong thing, I tell the whole world about it.
Well said, Doctor. We have been talking in-depthly on how shrinkflation is a more current, practice now amongst manufacturers, and the roles that consumers can play in combating shrinkflation. And according to the guest, it's important that when you see something, you say something. But like you said, be honest in your reviews. Thank you again, Dr. Aliyu Iliyas, for all the insight you've shared on today's edition of the program.
Thank you for having me.
This is where we draw the curtains on today's edition of Business Daily. But join the conversation on social media and let us hear your thoughts. My name is Chiamaka Enendu. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.